World War II, an exciting chapter, but a very tragic historical event that took place that took out millions, tens of millions of people, not to mention the 6 million Jews. And I'm here to share with you a personal testimony of my father on VFI News. Stay tuned. World War II. The official dates are September 1st, 1939 to September 2nd, 1945. Of course, there were two major theaters of this war, one on the European continent and also the British Isles. And then, of course, there was the war out in Asia with Japan. But I want to share with all of you, as we are entering the month of June, why this is so significant. I want to remember the Allied forces who served and gave their lives, and for those who gave their lives to liberate the prisoners in the extermination and concentration camps. It is estimated also that amongst Allied forces, 416,800 soldiers were killed and died in World War II. So we remember those who gave their lives so that we may be free today in the world. Now, my father, Leonard George Segal, was a U.S. soldier in World War II. My uncle was a pilot for the RAF in England during World War II, and his brother, who was shot down and killed. As my father grew older, he began to tell us in the family little by little of his personal story and the memories he had from the war. The shocking ones he seemed to keep hidden for decades and only began opening up to our children more and more in the latter part of his life. Maybe it was meant to be, since our children as high school students in Israel would go on a school trip to Poland. They would visit the camps of Auschwitz, Birkenau, and other death camps. Batya and I would later ourselves visit the museums and camps that existed at Dachau and Treblinka. It is said of my father at the age of 19, October 22nd, 1943, that he was the youngest appointed warrant officer in his division. He served as a reconnaissance officer, like a second lieutenant, in the 142nd Anti-Aircraft Battalion amongst many battalions. Over 600 men served in that battalion with over 150 trucks and vehicles. Now, my father would go on to receive 5 battle stars for the 5 major battles he fought in, including the famous Battle of the Bulge. This battle was the 3rd campaign as he shuffled his troops around during the night in the area of Belgium and the Ardennes. I remember my father once telling me, quote, "On Christmas Eve, I gave my guys a short break, but we never knew what was around the next corner. The Germans dropped paratroopers behind our lines speaking perfect English. You would usually get a drop on them with trick questions, but it was a very scary time for me and for the soldiers." You might remember in the series Band of Brothers, the paratroopers of the 101st Airborne held Bastogne. This was the last-ditch effort in a desperate move for the Germans to break through U.S. lines. It's an interesting but a long story. Our son himself served in the 101st Airborne Division in Israel for many years. An interesting thought in comparison, but something we are proud of in the defense of Israel against the wars of terror. Now, General Patton needed trucks from my father's battalion to relieve the 101st Airborne in Bastogne. Dad had to get through to Luxembourg, where Patton's headquarters were. My father in reconnaissance was out there all by himself, marking the way for the convoy of trucks. He had developed a special secret signal system. He was out there on his own with his own driver and in a Jeep, and I believe that driver or somebody close to my father was killed. He succeeded, though, in making it through to Patton in Luxembourg, behind enemy lines and through enemy lines. And he delivered those trucks as they were so desperate to relieve the 101st. More than this, my father would go on to receive the Bronze Star Medal for Meritorious Service. He developed the battalion field artillery standing operations procedure, enabling his battalion to fire many additional missions. He also turned air artillery into field use as well. The official report is, during the 142nd Gun Battalion campaigns, he, together with his soldiers, destroyed 17% of all enemy planes coming within reach of their guns. They had 153 ground engagements with the Nazi army, destroying over 50 enemy tanks and motor vehicles, causing the surrender of 5 enemy towns and killing and capturing over 1,200 enemy personnel. Finally, at the end of the war, my father was in Erfurt, Germany. The war ended in Europe on May 7, 1945, to great jubilation. My father would continue to serve in the Army of Occupation after the war and was flying gliders, but he thought he was going to be sent on to Japan, but that never happened. The other thing to remind us of is how I can say God was watching over my father and this family, because even in the second wave of the D-Day invasion, my father was never injured and obviously never killed, and that's why I'm here to share with you what happened. However, 25% of our European relatives and family were all murdered in the Holocaust and the concentration camps. So today, we have to take a special note of the over 160,000 Holocaust survivors that still remain alive in Israel today, mostly in their latter age, in the late 80s, 90s, and even some over the age of 100. But they have hope for the future, and we want to share God's love through alleviating their financial pressures and life's basic necessities, providing to them what they need most. Also, we are promoting events every week and every month, both at clubs that we sponsor in Jerusalem and in other places in Israel, and also here at the Millennium Center, to help alleviate the pressures of loneliness, as that many of them have lost their spouses already. And so to them, we take our hats off. We honor also the Allied forces that were killed in the Holocaust, and we look forward to a better, hopeful day for all of us and all of you. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts at Vision for Israel and the VFI News. God bless you and shalom.